Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 6 of Baki Talki. So the first 5 episodes are now out to the viewing public, and I realize some people might think that I don't have any female friends based on the co-hosts, so to prove them wrong, I've brought my sister onto the show. Say hi, Kathryn.
Hi, Kathryn.
Oh boy, we're going to have a lot of jokes.
I'm starting with quality jokes right off the bat.
Perfect. So, 2 questions for you that I ask every guest. So first off, other than Baki, what shows are you watching?
Oh, what shows am I watching? I just finished watching the Stranger Things episodes that are out.
Pretty good.
I'm very excited for the final 2 to come out.
Yep. All right. Well, nice and brief, nice and short.
Well, I don't want to spoil Stranger Things. It just came out. I don't want to. There's not really anything I can say about it.
Is it strange? Potentially stranger?
The seasons just get stranger and stranger.
All right. And second question. Before watching this episode, what did you know about Baki going into it?
Well, I listened to your first episode with Jack, but I was kind of like doing chores and half listening, so I don't really know what the plot is. You had also said that you were starting a podcast about Baki, and I'm also mainly here to take credit for coming up with the name Baki Talki. So that's the main knowledge I have of the show.
All right. I'm going to edit that part out, but...
No.
All right. Well, let's jump right into it. This episode is... I think this was the first step. When I first watched Baki, this was the episode that made me realize it was something special. Although the previous episode was also good. This episode starts with the conclusion to the Hanayama spec fight from last week. And it starts off with a bang, really. Hanayama with his gruesome skull mouth, which I want to get your thoughts on. But the fight starts with Hanayama punching Spec about 20 feet in the air, and then he hits a lamppost and electrocutes himself.
Well then, have you had enough yet?
I wanted to get your thoughts on just what just happened there.
Well, I think my first main question I had when I was watching it is, are there holes in his face, or does he have 3 separate mouths? Because I think I was processing it as him having 3 separate mouths for probably about 10 minutes or so. And then I realized that he just had like holes in his face. But it seems as though his teeth go at a much wider angle than a normal human mouth would.
Well, that's the thing. Hanayama is not a normal man.
Sure, any normal person takes that kind of beating. It's game over. But the key word there is normal. Believe me, there is nothing normal about Kaoru Hanayama.
But you're completely right. It looks very odd. For context, the cliffhanger to the last episode was Spec put a bunch of bullets in his mouth and then made them explode, and so his mouth literally exploded. So he didn't used to have holes in his mouth.
These are recent.
They happened about
it
1 second ago. Yes.
Yeah, it really did feel, because I didn't watch any of the previous episodes. It felt very like I was launched into the middle of something with no context.
Literally,
I was also very surprised that Baki doesn't show up until there's only 4 minutes left.
If you'd watched the previous 5, that's very par for the course. Baki feels like in some episodes he just shows up because of like a contract thing, and he has to show up in each episode. He doesn't do a lot.
Yeah, like how's his class going today?
Oh man, I can't wait to talk about his class scene.
But that's later. That's later.
So yes, Hanayama with his gruesome 3 mouths punches Spec 20 feet in the air into a light post, which electrocutes him.
Amazing.
Yes, loved it. And then he takes him, drags him over to the police department. I wanted to get your thoughts there, as the juxtaposition of Hanayama as this mythical figure in his thong and tattoo versus the 50 police officers cowering before him. Do you think Hanayama could overthrow the government by himself?
So Hanayama, is he the guy with the tattoos, or is he the holes in his face guy?
Holes in his face. He also has a big tattoo on his back. But you are right. They both do have tattoos. Hanayama has holes in his face.
Could he overthrow the government? Do you mean like could he fight down the police?
Yes. Could he take on the entire police department that we saw in that scene?
Well, I mean, if he can get his hands on them, he can just grip them apart. So if he's within range of all of the police, yes.
Yep.
And it's really hard to shoot him because of all the holes.
Yep, and that's not just speculation. That is that's canon right there.
Now, you brought up his thong. It's very is this typical of Baki? Because it seemed from like the intro seemed like they had a lot of like short shorts and thongs and no shirts. Is this par for the course for Baki, or was this just a special episode?
So I wouldn't say that most fighters fight like that, but I wouldn't say it's unusual. He's definitely not the only guy who fights in a thong. Once we get Mr.
Did he
Oliver.
Did he start the fight in the thong?
Oh man, he started the fight by wearing a nice suit, like a mobster type of suit, and then he grabbed his pants and tore them off like they were tearaway pants, but they were just regular dress pants. And then he ripped off his entire outfit like Lou Ferrigno's The Hulk.
And then ripped off his cheeks.
Yeah. And then his cheeks.
They were tearaway cheeks.
He realized he was showing too many cheeks, so he got rid of the two of them.
I also noticed that he was crying blood, like as if his tear ducts had blood tears ready to go.
Yeah, I think that was the author trying to like conceptualize the idea that a bomb went off in your mouth. Like, I guess your cheeks fly off and you start bleeding out of your eyes. Honestly, not the worst case scenario.
I don't know that that's not what happened, so.
If that's all that happened to me after a bomb went off in my mouth, I'd be okay with it, honestly.
Well, you're not. What's his name again?
Hanayama. Oh my god. Kaoru Hanayama.
Kaoru Hanayama.
So Hanayama brings Spec to the police department headquarters, drops him off. Spec is completely defeated. The chief thanks Hanayama, local Yakuza boss.
Show him some respect. Hanayama, we owe you big time for this one.
And tells him to, tells one of his men to drive him home. And then, unbeknownst to us, Spec, of course, was faking it, defeats the entire police department that was around him. And then we get a nice change in perspective. What did you think of our narrator, Sergeant, whatever his name was?
The driver, Sergeant Tsuneo Katahira.
Two main thoughts. My first one was just that I was very surprised at how much time we spent with him. In that, like, there's a little intro, and then we're with him for pretty much the rest of this encounter that he witnessed. So I didn't think he was going to play as big a part as he did. My second thought on him was that he really seems to pretend like he doesn't know, like he knows a normal amount about Hanayama, but he knows a lot about him.
No offense, but it's obvious you people don't have any idea what kind of man Hanayama is. I don't think there's a cop alive who hasn't heard of the legendary brawler Kaoru Hanayama. I know I shouldn't be saying this, being a cop and all, but I kind of wish I could be more like him. Even as a cop, you have to admire the way he fights. I've heard his grip strength is so strong it can't even be measured on a dynameter. And I've also heard the rumor that he once tore a chunk out of a deck of playing cards with just 2 fingers. A whole chunk! Now, if you're thinking that his unidentified attacker was probably Kaoru Hanayama, you'd be right.
Like, he starts a lot of the sentences with, like, well, I've heard around the town, and then, like, 5 specific trivia facts about him.
Yeah, he's like, I've heard of Hanayama. You know, the guy who was able to rip a playing card deck in half with his bare fingers.
Yeah, either the police force is talking about Hanayama a lot, or this guy is using them as an excuse for his fandom of Hanayama.
I thought he was a good narrator, though. He seemed to have a very in-depth knowledge of Hanayama and also, like, karate techniques and just general combat.
Oh, yeah, he was very informed. I was surprised he was just, I guess, in this one episode.
Yeah.
I assume he's not returning.
Nah, he ain't coming back.
I also like that we got one sentence from what I assume is, like, the general narrator of the show.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
It sounded like a voice that wasn't that, and then he said something. Yeah, he comes in for, like, 1 second and says something like, and the policeman saw it all. And then we're just with the policeman for, like, 10 minutes.
Yeah, you got to do like a little. He's like the MC, you know. He's introducing the other narrators.
I think he also comes up later, the actual narrator, but I thought it was the doctor talking the whole time, and then it went back to the doctor, and he suddenly had a deeper voice. I was like, oh, that was the narrator.
To be fair, that doctor did have an especially goofy voice, so I can understand the confusion.
How are we supposed to explain this?
So the fight continues, now told from the third-person perspective of some police officer who was there. Speck snuck up behind the car, flipped it over, and then, and what was a surprise to me, because I honestly forgot about it, pulled out a pistol and just shot Hanayama, like, in the knee a few times. And I thought, woof, thank goodness that's enough. And then he pulled out a second pistol and shot Hanayama in the other knee, which I thought was honestly not cool.
I was very surprised that he had, like, just a pistol and that was his go-to thing. Like, I wasn't sure. I didn't think it was going to be that kind of show. And also, like, why didn't he start with the gun? Oh, there's a line we skipped that I think is like the policeman
Yeah.
he's talking, he's just like,
Actually, incidents like this are why I support arming the police with high-caliber machine guns.
and that's why I support arming the entire police force with heavy machine guns.
This is going
That's like
straight
a
to
one-off.
the record. Yeah, just a little peer into the character of Sergeant Kiraha right there.
Just got a little bit into his politics and why he thinks he should get a machine gun.
Maybe none of this even happened. Maybe he just made this all up as an excuse for him to get those high caliber rifles.
Yeah, it's all set up.
Yeah, so then after shooting him in the knee a few times, what does Hanayama do? I think that's when the flashbang then goes off, blinding him, and then he gets put into a rear naked choke, which is unescapable. I take Sergeant Kiraha's words on that. Unless...
Well, let's loop back to the flash thing first.
Oh, sure.
Because it alludes to this bus kidnapping as if it was an event. Did that happen in the series?
No, I think that's a real thing that happened in Japan probably in 20 years ago when this manga was written.
Because he says it's just like that infamous bus kidnapping.
Yeah, I have no idea what he's referring to. I think it's a real world thing. I don't think on Baki there was... You know how I can tell it didn't happen in Baki? Because they solved it with a flashbang grenade instead of sending in a really buff guy to beat up everybody.
Well, but does it exist in the real world?
Let's ask editor Steve. So from what I can tell, this is a real incident, the Neo Mugacha incident, which was a real bus jacking in Japan in the year 2000, which was solved using stun grenades.
Wow, editor Steve, that was so informative.
Yeah,
We can always rely on you.
Let's keep moving because apparently it's been answered. So how did Hanayama escape the rear naked chokehold that Speck had on him?
Oh, is this like a quiz? I don't remember.
Okay, I can tell you. I more just want to get your thoughts on the idea that Hanayama grabbed onto Speck's arm so hard that he was able to rip the muscle off the bone, basically.
Oh, are we gonna skip when he tries to shoot him and it goes through his mouth?
Oh, that's it. I knew I was jumping ahead of something. Right.
I think I did briefly touch on it before, but I think it deserves a deep dive. How great of a move that is!
All right.
You're like, you can't shoot me in the face because my face is already gone.
Yeah. So for reference, Spec points the second pistol that he had, right in Hanayama's defeated mouth.
What's he gonna do?
At the last minute, Hanayama turns to the side, and the bullet goes straight out his cheek, straight out the hole in his face.
See, he turned his head at the last second, so the bullet went straight through his neck.
Proving that bullets are ineffective. And
You would think that would be his greatest weakness, but it turns out to be one of his greatest strengths. I also enjoyed when they sent him out in the beginning with a mask on.
Oh yeah,
Over his like blown up face.
Just a little bandana. Yeah, I liked that because his face was pretty hideous. So, the fight, more or less, after the gunshot, we finally get to the rear naked choke, which Hanayama uses his gigantic hands to rip the flesh off Spec's bones and thigh for some reason. Horrible way to lose a fight, I would say. Spec then
Kind of interesting. Like, we see him like rip a chunk of a guy's arm out, and then the cop goes like, "But get this, he can take a chunk out of a deck of cards with just 2 fingers." Isn't that more impressive?
Yes, 100. I don't know why they keep referencing that fact. I think every time Hanayama shows up after this, they also bring up that fact and nothing else.
Which, like, it is impressive, but it's not something you have to think about it to be like, oh yeah, I guess that would be difficult.
Yeah, and also if somebody did that to me, I would just assume they're a magician because it's like a playing card trick, you know?
Yeah, it was very strange. But sorry, I cut you off. What was the second part of the fight?
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna.
He's ripping out chunks of flesh.
He's ripping out chunks of flesh. Spec sticks a finger in his ear up to his brain.
My god.
That's when Spec gave him the finger, all the way up to the knuckle. It probably even reached his brain.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, no.
Which had apparently no lasting consequences. I have to assume he's permanently deaf. Like, the finger did go quite far up his ear.
Well, so I saw him, so he, like, gave him the finger to the camera, and then I assumed that he had, like, curled it in for the punch. So I didn't realize that he had struck it into his brain until he, like, pulled it out.
And it didn't stop Hanayama at all. Now, here's the thing that I don't know if you caught this in the first episode. So Spec is the death row inmate whose gimmick is that he can hold his breath for 5 minutes, right? Like, he can keep punching.
I don't remember anything from the episode 1 podcast. I don't even know why these guys are mad at each other. Like, what are they beefing about?
Great question. And honestly, to answer it, it's not going to be much of an answer. Spec came to Tokyo because he wanted to taste defeat. Some guy recruited Hanayama to fight him because Hanayama's a pretty tough dude. They don't really have any beef.
Oh, that explains a lot. Because later, when the guy... we'll get to that later.
Yes.
The later part was very confusing.
Yes.
Out of context, but now I understand.
Yeah.
So he wanted someone so strong that he could lose in a fight to him.
Yes. Theoretically,
that was his dream.
Yes, that was his dream. Okay, yeah, I bet that made no sense.
It's all starting to come together.
Okay. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Anyway, all I was going to comment on is Spec's gimmick.
Well, I mean, you see 2 guys fighting, you assume they both want to win.
Yeah, especially if the other guy just doesn't give up and then pulls a pistol to win the fight. But yeah, Spec's gimmick is he can hold his breath for 5 minutes at a time and then punch you for 5 minutes without breathing in his signature move, the apnea rush. And I thought it was sort of ironic.
Wait. Does breathing slow down punching significantly? Like, is that, can't you breathe while you punch?
Sorry, this was explained in the last episode. If you knew anything about boxing, you'd know that when you breathe, that's when the other guy punches you. According
from the intro to the show, I assumed that there would be some boxing in it.
No.
But no.
Don't worry.
Not one mention of boxing.
If you wait till later in the season when Muhammad Ali shows up, but not yet.
That's a get for the show.
Yeah. They got him the voice act. Oh my god. Anyway, Speck, the master of holding his breath, loses by being choked, which to me doesn't make any sense because it should take 5 minutes for him to be choked out, but he gets choked out in like 20 seconds. So
he gets choked out by a man who can't hold his breath because he can't close his mouth. It's not possible.
That would be so difficult. Like, he'd have to do like the Home Alone face if he wanted to like hold his breath.
Oh, they should have him do that at some point. That would be great. It's the perfect pose for him.
Very fits his mood. He's also like, I think he's like 19 in this episode. Like,
well, who knows what age anyone is in this.
Okay. I think that's the perfect segue into the next part. So this is one of my all-time favorite moments in Baki. We cut to the hospital where a doctor is looking over Speck's body. It's on a bunch of life support. But what's interesting is Speck looks a lot worse than he did in the previous fight. So, Kathryn, do you want to explain what happened to Speck?
Well, it's as if you're looking at the corpse of Speck. So he's got all of his tattoos, because otherwise, God knows who this guy is. Like, he's like a frail old man hooked up to like life support with these like cool doctors standing over him.
And so the doctor mentions that
when he arrived at the hospital, you would have thought this patient was in the early years of middle age. I would have said 50, 55 at most. But he is, in fact, 97.
But he did not look 55.
I hope I look like Speck at 55.
The very buff 55.
Yeah, but an extremely buff 97. So it turned
not
out
at all.
It turned out Speck's been 97 for the entire series. So remember to keep that in mind when thinking back at everything that's happened, and how a 97-year-old man escaped out of a submarine and held his breath for 5 minutes.
Was he ever young? Was he ever like? Why did he stop aging in mid-50s?
I think at 50 he found his dream, and that kept him alive with full energy. I think to explain this, we need to tell the audience about the story of Jack Lee Biondi. Can you walk me?
Jack Lee Beyond. Oh, is that the other dude that I don't know why he couldn't just tell the story of what's his name? What's the tattoo guy's name?
Speck.
Yeah, I don't know why we couldn't hear Speck's origin story, but instead we hear a very similar story of a completely different man that had the same age issue.
In 1976, a treasure hunter by the name of Jack Lee Biondi discovered a sunken ship off the California coast. Only 14 days after discovering the treasure, Biondi was dead, at which they made a startling announcement that the cause of death was old age. To say this was a surprise to his colleagues and friends would be an understatement. Even Belinda, his wife of 20 years, couldn't understand it. Jack Lee Biondi, explorer and adventurer, a seemingly healthy and fit middle-aged man in the prime of his life, was in fact 88 years old.
Yeah.
And what happens? I think it's that he's very rich.
He was a treasure hunter who searched his whole life for one treasure. And then after he found it, Jack Lee Biondi, who looked like a 50-year-old playboy millionaire, died of old age a week later because he was actually 103.
I really love when they cut to his wife, who's like, "What?"
Even his wife didn't. Oh my god, yeah. Oh.
That must have been a wild week for her. Just
oh my god.
dies of old age within a week. Found the treasure.
She would have inherited $1 billion. Big day for her.
Be very confusing. But so then it concludes with, it's like once you achieve your dream, you die of old age, and then the doctor's assistant or whatever, he's standing by, just like,
wait, his dream? How'd he achieve his dream by losing a fight and getting beaten senseless?
And then I'm like, yeah, that makes no sense. And then we're in the classroom with Baki.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's so funny.
Never to be answered. Like, what? Like, I thought maybe it was something that was gonna come up in a later episode.
No, he accomplished his dream. He was defeated for once, and that was it.
Well, I mean, in a way, that's such like a nice happy ending for Spec. Like, he achieved his dream, and we know that he was happy and contented because he immediately died of old age.
That's how I want to go.
I gotta find a dream.
Yeah. Well, you have until you're like 97. Well, actually, I think you find your dream in your 50s is the goal.
Well, you want to find your dream at whatever age you want to lock in.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess we should move quickly. But it has to be a really unobtainable dream, because if you get your dream, then you just it's like you're the Wicked Witch of the West and you just start melting. Oh man. One thing I wanted to bring up, because Baki has a habit of taking, like, I wouldn't say urban legends, but just like stories and just treating them like fact. We discussed this with Synchronicity and Dynamite in episode 1. I assumed when I watched Baki the first time that the story of Jack Lee Bionde was just like an urban legend that the author had heard and wrote a character about. But he's not. He just made up this character too. Like, it's like he had such a ridiculous
idea about the infamous bus crash.
Okay, yeah.
Like,
well,
was that real?
I think it was. And the audience.
Oh wait, I
knows.
already know.
Yeah.
I already know. I forgot that I did learn the answer to that, and I do know.
Yes, perfect. Anywho, Jack Lee Biondi, not a real story. Spec, also not a real story. Holding your breath for 5 minutes and punching a guy the entire time, probably not real. But yeah, that's the end of Spec. That's the end of the first full fight in Baki, I'd say. So we're down to only 4 death row inmates. It's a bit of a shame.
They're on death row.
Yeah. 5 death row inmates escaped their jails and came to Tokyo to find defeat.
Oh, okay. So is that why they're is Hanayama one of them?
No.
Okay, he's just a. So why are they fighting?
They want defeat, and they came to Tokyo, and so Hanayama lives in Tokyo.
Does Hanayama also want defeat?
I'll be honest, Hanayama hasn't spoken a line of dialogue, honestly, until the fight started. So his motivation seemed to be that he just, I don't know, maybe he felt like peeved off at these guys. I think he has the least depth of anybody into his motivation.
And least depth in his face skin. There's no depth to that.
Good one.
Hollow.
All right.
It's really been seared into my mind. That my main takeaway from this episode is that this guy, like, is just walking around with no face and no plan to heal his face. Like, he's just carried on.
To be honest, that's why I always give people a heads up that the episode's going to be gory, because, you know, Baki has a bit of blood, but I really made sure I gave you a heads up because I was like, this is disgusting.
I can handle a cartoon gore though. If this was like a live action thing, I would be it would be bad. But also, I didn't know that. I think if I hadn't had the context that a bomb just went out off in his mouth, I would find it more disgusting than like this dude just has 3 mouths, which is what I thought it was for most of the episode.
Hanayama.
I didn't know anything about Baki. I thought maybe it was the monsters kind of anime. Realistic.
Where Hanayama punched a guy 20 feet in the air and then got electrocuted Bugs Bunny style.
Kaoru Hanayama's power had transcended that of the gods.
Yeah, no, it's... Well, on the topic of realism, I would have said that maybe this isn't a super realistic show, but Baki's teacher... in the next scene has a lot of really grounded points that I think we could touch on. So just to set the stage, after we finish with Spec in the hospital and the story of Jack Lee Biondi, we go to Baki in math class, I believe.
I'm looking at it now. Literally 17 minutes into the episode is our first mention of Baki or anything about Baki.
Yeah. And in this math class, his teacher starts picking on him because Baki is bad at his class, and starts talking about how the human mind is more important than the human body. You know, you'll never run faster than a motorcycle.
I mean, look, I don't care how fast you can run. You can't outrun a motorcycle. And no matter how strong you are, you can't lift a car completely off the ground. No matter how fast you can swim, you can't swim 1/10 as fast as a well-designed speedboat. No matter how high you can jump, you'll never be able to fly like a hang glider.
You'll never be able to fully lift up a car. Even if you can jump really high, you can't fly like somebody with a paraglider.
This is also a weird argument, though, because those things he's comparing him to technology, not to thinking. Like, you're never gonna think better than a computer, right? Like, these aren't feats of the mind. It's just a dude on a motorbike.
You have to actually have a very advanced mind to drive a speedboat or use a motorbike. You have to have a really big mind if you want to lift up a car, also.
Yeah, you just gotta think about it a lot. I do like that we get to see what I assume is Baki's inner imagining of him losing to the technology.
Hey, wait for me!
We get a nice little montage of that.
Oh my god, Baki's dialogue during that, just like, wait up! Oh no! I love that scene. It's such a funny scene also, because like, I thought it was like really an interesting piece for just like a show that's really often about like perfecting the human body and seeing how far that can go, for like this math teacher to talk about the limits of the human body and then instantly be contradicted.
This is the best part of the episode. And I mean, the lead up was already pretty wild, but the scene is wild.
Doyle, our Irishman with metal elbows, who killed Rob Robinson, who we haven't seen in a while. Well, Baki's teacher is haranguing him in front of the class. He mentions that even the world's best track and field athlete wouldn't be able to jump up to our second floor window. With
very specific and weird thing to say.
Yes.
And he really like makes a moment of it. Like, he doesn't just say it once. Like, he says it once looking out over the track field, and then he walks around and he keeps saying it. Like, you'll never leap through the window.
And then under his breath, he starts talking about how stairs were invented by people and things like that. Like, it's...
I don't care if you're the fastest runner or the highest high jumper. The fastest sprinter at full speed from the far side of the field couldn't make the leap up here to this classroom. Nope. You'd have to take the stairs just like everyone else. Stairs,
give it a rest, will ya?
Were designed by an architect using his brain.
And I think people in the class are going like, oh, yeah, you'll have to take the stairs.
Yeah. Anyway, if you can't guess what happens, Doyle, I believe from a standing leap, jumps through the window from the ground. I think like the high school track field that he just jumped out of.
You see, it's the human intellect that helps us to overcome our physical limitations. I mean, can you imagine someone leaping into this classroom?
And he wasn't listening to the conversation. He just decided to leap in the window like that.
That was the best part. I assumed that it was a plot hole because he said that I heard something going on, but he doesn't. He just said, I saw your teacher talking to you, so I jumped through the window.
I saw you sitting here getting chewed out by this gas bag of a teacher, so I thought I'd do you a favor by skipping the stairs and just leaping right in.
Leaped! Little did he know, the teacher at that very moment was just saying that it would be impossible. Also, what was his name again? The dude that
Doyle.
comes through the window? Because to me, this is just a new dude. That's just... No context has leaped through the window. Which I had assumed he had a beef with he was going to start talking to the teacher because he had just actively defied what he said. But no, he's there for Baki.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he flew from Ireland to taste defeat, just like everyone else. And
Is he Irish? He didn't sound Irish.
He does not sound Irish at all.
He sounded equally American.
Well, his name's Doyle. He's from Ireland. He's got red hair.
Oh, I didn't know his name was Doyle. He doesn't burst through the window and say, "Hey, I'm Doyle."
That would have made the scene a lot more clear. I think that would have made it better. Yeah, I love that scene. After he lands, Doyle, of course, kicks Baki's teacher's ass. And then Baki pulls a classic Baki move, which shows up way too many times, where he starts crying, but like it's a joke and he's not actually crying.
Confused by that. So those were not genuine tears.
No.
Did it provide him any advantage in his next move?
If you saw Doyle, he sort of went, huh? So, yes.
I was so confused.
It's a confusion move. Dorian's used it earlier this season as well.
It was Dorian.
Oh, don't worry about Dorian. Dorian will come back in a few episodes. But yeah, Baki cries, and then, I don't know what I think he kicks his desk into Doyle's face for about 20 seconds, and then the episode ends.
And what an ending. Like, I thought things were calming down in the classroom when I thought we were just getting our Baki time, but that leap through the window starting in a giant fight with Baki, that was quite a note to end on. And then are the credits the same in every episode where he's just running towards some girl?
Kozue, yeah. Oh my god.
Oh, and then there's another buff guy at the very ending.
Yeah, that's Baki's dad, Yujiro.
Of course.
Man, I was talking about this podcast with one of my friends from volleyball, and she was like, "Oh, I should come on to the show." You know what? Bring me on when it's an episode about like a female character. And I was like, "Oh no."
Listen, I don't think the creators of this show were very interested in that. I feel like they're more like, I want to draw some buff guys just fighting each other.
They know.
Are there any female characters, or are there, other than like the schoolgirls?
Other than background characters, I'd say there's two. There's Kozue, Baki's girlfriend, who does have an arc this season. There's someone in season 3 who I'm not even gonna get into that. she's a big character that season.
I mean, season 3 is pretty far away.
Oh yeah. Don't worry. This is not. She's not. It's more of the same. It's not great representation of the other gender. Anyhoot, that was the episode. So much happened. This is gonna be a tough one to top next week, but we'll get to see more of Doyle. We'll get to see how this fight ends. Kathryn, I have a few outro questions I ask every episode.
Okay.
First off, did you have any other questions? Anything unanswered I could clear up for you? Or do you think we covered everything?
Well, I mean, I had nothing but questions, but I think I got most of it. I know why they're beefing. My main one was like, why was this his dream? But that makes a lot more sense now. Yeah, I think I got all of my questions.
All right, cool. The second thing I wanted to ask is, the problem is, so I always ask people to define a character. The problem is, every character in this episode's been done so far. So, like, we've done Baki, we've done Spec, we've done Hanayama. I think the most relevant one we have is Doyle, who appeared for about 1 minute in the episode. So, with that depth of knowledge, if you had to define Doyle for me, how would you define him?
Doyle is a man who, through no skill or intuition of his own, has impeccable timing. Just by chance. Does that work? Is that I don't know anything about his fighting ability other than he's a good jumper.
Oh, that has nothing to do. His gimmick is he puts like metal blades in his body that can like stick out.
Well, I mean, that did not come up in this episode. All he does is leap through glass.
All right, last question.
I can tell you what... Oh, no, okay, yeah. What's the last question?
This is the big one. Now that you've watched an episode of Baki, do you think it's a good show?
It's an entertaining show. I feel like it's hard to tell because there's a lot of, like, loose ends that I assume... There's a lot of questions I assume were answered in previous episodes, and a lot of things wrapped up that I think will come in later episodes. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Yes, I would say it's a good show.
I think that's the first yes we've gotten. We've gotten a lot of ones with asterisks. This is a big day for
You know
Baki.
what it is? It's a show that knows what it is. And I love shows like that. Give me Riverdale. Give me I don't know. Give me Sabrina. Give me Baki. Like shows that are just off the rails.
Off the rails because that's where they want to go. Because they
exactly.
Yes, I agree.
I appreciate that. I would not want a version of Baki where everything makes perfect sense. I don't think that would improve the show.
Yeah, no, I don't need Baki angst or anything like that. All right. Well, that's all the questions I had. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Kathryn. It was a great episode.
Well, it was actually my dream to be on this show. Oh no!
No!
I'm dying of old age.
Wait, if you die of old age and I'm your twin, good thing I
don't live. My final words is never live your dreams.
All right. Well, thanks, Kathryn. That's all the Baki we got to talkie today. Tune in next week for episode 7 on now Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podbean. All right. See ya.